So we have been speaking about this pendulum of sevens and eights. It's the same pendulum of the 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot, the Exodus and the giving of the Torah, because the Torah says 7 weeks, 7 days, 7 times. And hence the 50th day of the giving of the Torah is something like an 8. So the 8 and 50 metaphorically are interchangeable. We have the baby whose brit is on Shabbat, and again we have this relationship between 7 and 8, where 8, the supernatural, in a sense, trumps the natural, even though 7 is the holy number, but its holiness manifested within creation. And we have the 7-branch menorah in the temple, but the miracle with the menorah on Hanukkah being represented by the number 8. By the way, we have the 7 days of Sukkot, and then there is the 8th day, Shmini Atzeret, which is when we have the Simchat Torah, this very joyous dancing of the Torahs. And indeed, the Talmud gives this lovely example, parable, that through the 7 days of Sukkot, we are together and we commune with other people, but also with God. And the Talmud says it is like a king who says, Kashat alai pridatchem, it will be difficult for me to part with you. Let's spend one more day together. That is Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day. The question is asked, what will one more day accomplish? That same sad farewell is just postponed. And the answer is no, there's something about the quality of 8 that makes it eternal and permanent. And the holiday of Shavuot, of weeks, the one that is the 50th day, so you have 7 times 7 and then Shavuot, is also called Atzeret. So we have this recurring theme. And what it really represents is 7, or 7 times 7, is the maximum that a finite human being can accomplish in his spiritual path, correlating all of his own soul powers, his intellect, his emotions, and his actions. And when he does that, he brings upon himself then a infinite revelation from above, one which in a sense is dependent upon his effort, because his effort is a precondition to it, but its quality is far, far greater. And so this parallel that we now have also, 7 weeks after Pesach, 49 days, counting the Omer, each day representing a different one of the qualities of the soul, of which there are also 7 times 7. And then, on the 50th day, we have Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, God descended on Mount Sinai, a revelation from above, far, far greater than what is proportionate to our efforts, but coming as a response to our efforts. And that is the same dynamic that is happening with the 7 years. And then the year number 7 is Shemitah. And then we have a cycle of 7 times 7. And the 50th year, which is this transcendent number, like 8, 50, 49 is 7 times 7, is the Yovel, the Jubilean year, the Jubilee, where it says, Vayikra Dror la'aretz, and you shall call freedom to the land. This is this emancipation, this true liberation from limitations. And this is what our Parsha is speaking about. In the very opening, there's a curious introduction. It says, God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai saying, and then the verses present to us the commandment of the 7th year, the commandment of the 50th year. And the question is, why does it say that these words were said on Mount Sinai? Why this emphasis? Now we know that the revelation of the Torah, the revelationary moment where the Torah became effective and became this covenant between God and the Jewish people on the day of Shavuot. And this, in fact, was primarily in the form of the Ten Commandments, which were said to the entire nation. And by the way, it is this fact that makes the revelational tradition of Judaism unique amongst all religions. And much has been written about this, especially the famous book of the Kuzari, explaining whereas other religions depend on a revelation to an individual or a small group of individuals, and others are expected to believe that. Here the covenant is with the nation of Israel, and the revelation was to the entire nation of Israel. So then we know that Moses was on the mountain for 40 days. And it was during that time that the revelationary process of the Torah continued. So there is a discussion about the details of the commandments. And Rashi here, citing the Talmud, says the words on Mount Sinai are added in this verse to tell us that the commandment of Shemitah, the commandment of the Sabbatical Year and of the Jubilee Year, are an example. Actually, the commandment of Shemitah was already introduced, but not the details. And here in our Sidra, we have the details. And before the details, the verse tells us they were said in Mount Sinai. Rashi explains that this is to tell us that just as the mitzvah of Shemitah, just as the commandment of the Sabbatical Year was revealed not only in its general outlines, but also its specifics on Mount Sinai, so too all the commandments, the details and the general outlines were all transmitted from Sinai. A very fundamental concept in terms of the transmission of the written Torah. And Rashi introduces it with a very famous rhetorical question in Hebrew, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel har Sinai. What is the concept of the Sabbatical Year? What does it have in common with Mount Sinai, which has become kind of the Talmudic version of, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Which is the American form of asking what do two things have to do with each other. So the question is asked, of all the commandments, why was Shemitah, why was the 7th year chosen by the Torah to be the prototype of divine revelation? Clearly, the idea is that it somehow represents all other commandments. It possesses a certain quality, a certain characteristic which makes it typical of all the commandments. And that is why when the Torah sought a mitzvah that would demonstrate the form of revelation for all of the commandments, that this revelation from Mount Sinai took place not only on the general level, but also on the specific level. The mitzvah, the commandment of the Sabbatical Year, the 7th year of rest, was chosen, and to some degree the Jubilee Year. And the answer to this question will be in the next